Hi, I'm Kelsey Munro and I'm the writer and co-creator of Bump.
Claudia Karvan, co-producer, co-creator of Bump, and actor in Bump.
Oh yeah,
you're
also
co-producer as well.
Forgot that bit. One framing, climate change is the biggest story in the world, right? And it affects us all at a personal level, and our characters, we're in the domestic sphere, but climate change affects us at that level too. And I've got to say, Claude really drove it.
I'd been to Heron Island with Groundswell and Climate Council, and I was quite cynical about talking about the climate. I thought I knew everything and I thought I couldn't be educated, but I was, and I was told that the most important thing to do is talk about climate change, which is really easy for us because we're in that space, we're in storytelling space. And the other most important thing is to talk about it with hope. So when Bump 4 was ordered, it's like, great, here's an opportunity to talk about climate change, thanks to Groundswell and Climate Council.
Yeah, Bump was always avowedly feminist, and finding a way to talk about something that is a sincere conviction, like feminism, but also make fun of it and also have fun with it, is something we needed to do with talking about the way we talked about climate change as well, because it is such a big and potentially overwhelming topic to bring into a story.
Primarily, we want Bump to entertain. It's
Absolutely.
entertainment,
Yeah.
and it's all about the audience, but we also have a feminist lens. We don't shy away from political stuff, and we wanted to talk about one of the most important issues of the day, which is climate. When we dived into this idea, we didn't have any role models, or there weren't other, well, actually there were shows that have gone out that have tried to canvas environmental stories and epically failed. So it was nerve-wracking. And we specifically didn't want to be didactic, we didn't want to be worthy, we didn't want to be
Boring.
contrived, boring. So we had to keep it funny and hopeful. And we did stumble, like in the early days there was an attempt that didn't have hope, and then at the last minute we added more sex and a southerly buster. And then it's true. Yeah. And then episode 1 ended on, okay, we can go forward. But we definitely did stray into didactic territory. It's a hard subject to make entertaining.
Yeah, it is. And we didn't want to be preachy or lecture to an audience, because who the heck wants to watch that? It's not fun. And but finding a way to get the sort of truth of the issue in, and some positive news about it. Like, we had this big folder of good environmental news stories, and we figured we could kind of slip those in a funny way to the script without it feeling like we were on a podium being really boring and lectury. I mean, we both read everything all the time, and there was just a lot of absorption of climate news and climate research. But actually, one book that really made a difference for me in thinking about how to do this was, you gave me Together We Can by Clara Rock.
That was given to me at the Heron Island.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the reason that triggered stuff that was important for me in this was that she, first of all, she talked about climate grief as like a real thing, and like it was the first time I'd ever heard anyone talk about the sort of emotional impacts of anxiety about climate change as something worth thinking about, whereas it rang really true, like it affects us all. And that was a way to dramatise how it would affect our characters in their kind of world. And she also talked about climate grief groups, which is why we put that in the episode 2 story.
And made fun of it.
And made fun of it,
but
because
also,
it's inherently funny.
But also got some serious messages across.
Yeah. But look, the other thing in that book that I thought really helped me was she listed all these kind of huge positive developments in terms of investment, financial regulations, technology developments around the world. And I, as a journalist, I always like to deal with facts, and I was like, oh, you don't know about all this stuff, right? Like, you don't know all these good things that are happening, and it's still not enough, but it's getting there. And so I found that approach really useful, which is when we had that idea of Ollie and Angie having the 3 things in the story.
Yeah, we would just share any article that we found relevant that was on on the environment, and we kept a big folder, and they were accessible for all the writers. And one of them was about glimmers. And
that's right.
having, I think it was an article in The Guardian, just having glimmers to get you through the darkness. And so we took that idea and put it into...
Glimmers are the opposite of triggers, right? Like triggers that make you feel bad, glimmers are things that make you feel good or hopeful. Yeah, I mean, absolutely. But I guess the first consideration was just to be true to our characters. You know, we know them really well now. We were coming into a fourth season with these characters who feel like real living beings to me, and we wanted to just be true to them, and they would have a range of reactions and beliefs and actions just like, you know, real people. So I think I went from a character first approach on that.
Yeah, that's true. And Bowie, I mean, he's always unpredictable, so you know, you could imagine that he would be behind climate, but then we sort of pushed him into a more sort of neurotic,
nihilistic
place, because it felt like a new facet to his character.
Yeah.
So we always want to push our characters into new territory. And with Rossa, she came here as an economic migrant. She does want things to be shiny and new, but also she's smart. So you know, she knows that putting solar on her factory is the smart thing to do.
Financial sense, yeah. And with Ollie, like, I think I have young kids, and I felt like you cannot, when you're looking at your young children, you just cannot give in to despair in climate. And if you look at things in a pretty cold-eyed way, you might. So I think that's why she was in a place of, she's the one kind of bringing the family together, going, okay, here's the Seahorse Hotel, here's the happy stories. We've got to kind of cling on to hope here, and that made very much sense for me as Ollie, as the young, you know, mother of young children, to be in that space. And Angie's being more clear-eyed about it, I think, and really putting it all on the line, and becoming an activist around saving the trees and the environment. But it really, it felt true to me that these characters at different stages of their lives had these reactions.
And I think because I'm in the story room, I'm always happy to throw my character under the bus. She can be the maddest.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it adds another dimension to these characters, right? Like, if you're forced to think about how they're interacting with a big real world issue like that, you find things you didn't know about the characters as well, I think.
And also, I think it's a trap with long-running series to sort of run out of ideas or start repeating yourself. So it was a sort of a gift for us to be allowed to dive into brand new territory, and be given permission by Stan to do that. We had no pushback. We only had one comment from one of the invested parties saying, you know, we're going too political, and we just ignored it.
True, yep. I think really well. I mean, in a way, I thought the fact that people didn't switch off or, you know, be alienated by this sort of new political bent or anything was a kind of, you know, what's the word I'm looking for? Like a testament to the fact that we kind of integrated really naturally in our story, and hopefully didn't feel, you know, it's like lecturing, like I was worried about before, you know. What do you reckon? Did you get a lot of feedback?
I mean, getting ordered for a fifth season is, it's a tick.
Pretty good feedback.
We obviously got away with telling these environmental
exactly.
stories and burying them in drama and comedy and character. My favourite bit of feedback was from Rose, our makeup designer, head of makeup, and she read the scripts and just said it's just so refreshing to hear people talking about what we're all thinking about and not having conversations about. And that you often get really great feedback from crew, and that's when I knew we were on the right track. I think straying into new territory, which is what we did with the environmental stories, makes anyone nervous, and I think that comment just came from a bit of fear. But we always keep the audience in mind, and we always want to hold the hand of the audience, and we want to share our values, and we're just very lucky to be storytellers, and we're having a great time. And I think people sense that too when they're watching the show. They sense where we're coming from, and we do it with heart and with our brains. So I think we got away with it.
So we filmed Angie's tree, right? The giant, beautiful Moreton Bay fig tree down at Glebe Point. And there are lots of those trees like that around here, and I live in the area. And I was really surprised how much I kind of came to appreciate these trees. Like thinking about it, putting it at the center of Angie's story. Like, I'm an atheist, I don't have a religious bone in my body, but I now see these trees like some sort of, there is a religiosity around my experience of these trees now. Does that sound insane? Like they're just divine. And remember that morning we shot when the first scene, Angie in front of the tree, that like the sun kind of came through that tree, like we were just, the whole crew were like, oh my God, it's perfect.
Yeah.
But it did have this sort of, I don't know, beneficence about it. And I do walk around the area now and I notice those trees and I feel grateful for them, which is something I do not expect to happen out of thinking about this stuff for the show.
Look, just the crew being underneath that tree all day and that was our location had an impact on all of us. It was like being in a church, to make a religious connection, but it did have an energy about it, being around that tree all day. It was beautiful.
Yeah. And we were cutting down trees like that a few years ago for the light rail in the eastern suburbs, you know, so it was a grounded story that's happened very recently in Sydney, and we wanted to make a point of it, I think.
Hopefully Bump 4 will have sort of paved a way for other storytellers to include references to the environment in their stories. Hopefully we've sort of broken a bit of a barrier there.
Yeah, showing it doesn't have to be a sort of commercial disaster or like a real turn-off for an audience. Like, I think there is a way to integrate it into your story that's entertaining and natural, you know? Like, it is that thing, like we all think about it all the time. Why shouldn't it be reflected in an entertainment in our shows? So when I was a journalist, people weren't reading climate change stories, and I think that, so the people who are looking at the numbers and looking at audiences are very afraid of putting that sort of political content in entertainment. So perhaps that sort of shift in perspective and education could do well to come from, like, you know, executives, networks, like for them to think about this sort of stuff more. And hopefully, like, we found a way to do it organically in our story, and there's got to be a billion stories where that's possible. And I think maybe it just takes, conviction and being true to your own story and finding a way to integrate it naturally.
Yeah, I think for the writers who are crying about the environment but finding it hard to put it embedded in their scripts, I think it is about how do you make it funny, how do you personalise it? Like, the environment is not a person. You need to put it in character. You know, even in like day-to-day romantic arguments about whether you're putting the compost out or whatever, it's just like, just even starting small, and not letting it overwhelm you, I think. Believing that it is something that we have to do, and then you just find a way.
Yeah.
I think we'll just always have a climate lens now going forth. Like, I think we've broken the back of it, and it will just be a part of our awareness, and it'll just naturally fall into dialogue. And we'll probably also have stories that are around the environment, but I think it's embedded now.
Yeah, it's just part of the Bump world.
And future worlds, other shows. I think it's silly to ignore it because it is a part of our day-to-day life.